It's nice to know that the sun actually does shine in Rochester. Seen it peeking through a couple of times. Like, this is wonderful. Our final learning lab on State Member Day is from our friends at Guidehouse. So I would like you to help me welcome. We have Jeff Bankowski and Sarah Razor. And so they are going to share some of their thought leadership with us today. So thank you guys. You guys are all mic'd up, right? Okay. There you go.
Ooh, that's a good way to start. Sound okay now? Sorry, y'all. That was a little embarrassing. Hey, everybody. I'm Sarah Razor, and it's really, really good to be. It feels a little bit like going home. My previous role was with NASCA as the executive director, so I was here with Pam, and it's been wonderful to come back and just be with you all. I really missed working with state and local government, so it's been a good, warm reception. So thank you all very much. We'll go ahead and get started and kind of introduce ourselves. Oh, I'm supposed to do the clicker. Here we go. All right, so that's me. And then this is actually not Jeff Bankowski. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely, Sarah. Can everybody hear me? Okay, perfect. So good morning. My name is Colin Hood, also with Guidehouse in our state and local government practice, and I'm on the client delivery side. So I work with teams on customer journey maps, whether that be related to a strategy project or organizational design. That's a really kind of powerful tool in our toolkit, and we deploy them pretty frequently. So currently supporting states, including New York and California and others on very similar projects. So excited to be here.
All right, so quickly about Guidehouse. One of the things I like about Guidehouse is that it reminds me of NASCA in that we've got equal parts public sector and private sector clients that we work with. And I saw that a lot at NASCA. So many chief administrators come from a very strong private sector background and bring those best practices. But it's also balanced with the public sector experts who've been with state government their whole careers and have come up through state government. So that's something I find very familiar about Guidehouse. We are a traditional consulting firm with like emphasis in technology consulting, but also disaster recovery, grants management, soup to nuts, really everything you all might need. We've got 10,000 employees with 50 locations worldwide. So we will dive into customer journey mapping. So one of the neat things that we noticed is that this year's top 10, which if you're not familiar, NASCA does a survey of state chief administrators every year. I think it dates back to maybe 2014. And interestingly, customer service was not always on there. And now it's like number 2, I think, on there. And I think that's been an interesting, maybe a evolution from COVID of seeing what customers need, or maybe just an awareness of state chief administrators. And so one of the things we want to do today is really just spend your all's time wisely communicating with each other. We know that's the value of the state member time. So our session really has a lot of interactive discussion. So we'll start with a group exercise. So if you're kind of at a small table, if you wouldn't mind like maybe bunching with another group, I think you'll get more out of this. But let's spend the next like 5 minutes or so really reflecting on how do you define your customer? What are your greatest pain points? Like kind of get in that mindset of like, what is your personal customer journey? So we will keep to time because I know we stand between you all and lunch. But let's take a few minutes. It's 11:26. Okay, let's take about 5 minutes to do this exercise. So if you all wouldn't mind kind of bunching up a little bit. Maybe my AV team can play some nice elevator music in the background to kind of get us in the vibe. I didn't ask them to do that. That's not fair. But if we can spend just a few minutes on this exercise, we'll take some notes, reflect and write down how well can your workforce define your customer? What is your greatest customer pain point? What customer service improvements have you seen? And then we'll discuss with your neighbors.
As Sarah and I walked around, we heard a lot of common themes and a lot of things that we're seeing with the work that we do across the country. So just was curious if anybody was willing to either share or maybe volunteer a neighbor to share one of the pain points that really stuck out to you all when it comes to customer service that you all are experiencing today.
Does anybody want to quickly share? Everybody's averting their eyes from me in the microphone. I see you. I'm familiar with this. She laughed at my joke, so she has to share.
Well, I'm in procurement, so that should be enough said, right? Everybody hates procurement because it just takes too long, right? It's like procurement and HR. We are the two specialist people in any organization. I think for us out of California, we're a centralized procurement office, but we also have delegated authority. So we are first and foremost an oversight entity. And so because of that, it's a lot of my team doesn't look at it as we provide a customer service. It's no, we're first and foremost that oversight entity, and we're going to tell you no because that's not how you do it. Instead of, how can we help you? How can we help you as a department get to your mission through procurement? And so for us, that's some of the the biggest pain points. And we just did a customer survey recently. I don't have the results back just yet, but it's a customer service of our state departments so that they can tell us, this is what you're doing well, this is what you're not doing so well, and this is what we actually need going into the future. So those are some of the things we're doing.
Perfect. Thanks, Angela. And
Thank
I
you.
mean, it's interesting you mentioned HR too. It's one of the things that I came in hoping that was going to be discussed and heard at a couple different tables. When we think about customer journey maps, I mean, we know we only have a few minutes together, and in the spirit of customer journey maps and kind of what we call love points, we know sitting and having conversations that aren't relevant is more of a pain point. So thinking about you all as customers. So one of the consistent trends that we see is the employee experience. And I know you all just came from a conversation very focused on that. Also, the candidate experience is another area when we think about those kind of centralized business functions where customer journey maps can go a long way. Out of curiosity, how many people felt that their workforce could kind of effectively and accurately describe their customer, kind of on a broad basis? Is that good? Yeah, and it's something we see, and I saw there was a mix of hands. I'd say it's one of the common trends when we think about the differences between when we deploy these in the private sector, who primarily use customer journey maps on a daily basis, whether it's the travel industry, hospitality, financial services. The public sector, we've noticed there are a few learning curves, and one of them is having people be able to understand their customer and have that customer mindset. We've done thousands of these customer journey interviews over time, and I would say over half of them, when we're sitting down and having a conversation and we ask an employee to describe their customer, their initial response is, we don't have any, right? We're in the government, we have a mission that we follow, and we really do work with those organizations to try to change that mindset. So we're gonna spend the next few minutes just highlighting a few areas of customer journey maps that we've seen that have had a lot of success. I mean, there's a lot of science that backs this up. We certainly don't have time to go into that today, but please, if you have any questions or want to have a discussion, don't hesitate to jump in, because I know you all have been in these all morning. So customer journey maps really differentiate from process maps in three core ways. And I think uniquely in the public sector, where processes tend to be even more static and processes can be even more challenging to adjust, journey maps do a good job of helping you break down the silos that a process map may naturally be organized in, and helps you have a really good grasp of the external circumstances that are frankly just out of your control. Right? Continuing on the example of employees and candidates, I'm just following the presentation, the last 2 years has completely shifted the preferences and the requirements of those customers, people that you either want to recruit into your workforce or people you want to retain. I think about the HR process, and one of the kind of areas that I'm really focusing in customer journey maps. I mean, the idea of paper-based application processes, even in things as complicated as a background check, have gone from things that people tolerated to incredibly strong pain points in a very competitive talent environment. And those are things that really customer journey maps can help elevate and help your workforce understand the importance of. So this, on the slide, we'll go through a few examples. Certainly there's a lot of value in the visualization, breaking down the silos, and most importantly, shifting away from purely effectiveness and efficiency to how the customer journey can actually be impacted across different parts of the organization. Perfect. So we want to leave you all with just a few templates. And just out of curiosity, how many people have leveraged customer journey maps in their organization? I would imagine a good number. I know it's been a concept that's been around for a long time, certainly not as popular in government as we see in the commercial industries, but there's a few core components, and even if you deploy this template or you just take a few tidbits from it, I think they can go a long way. You all just saw a few examples of personas when it came to your workforce. Personas really are the starting place, and this is where collecting data is really critical, and I know that is a struggle for a lot of public sector organizations, having access to the customer data that you need to frame these personas. And I think if there's one, I'll list these throughout our presentation. If there's a tidbit that I think you can take away from today is thinking through how you can start those data collection processes now. So as you think about customer journey mapping or making process changes in the future related to customers, you'll have that data available, because it really should help drive a lot of those decisions. But having personas is really the starting place. Understanding the different types of customers that you have, understanding their feelings, their preferences. We call them pain points and love points. So what is the part of the process that just really creates a lot of centralized frustration? Angela, you talked about procurement, right? So time, speed to complete a procurement. I know that is the big pain point. But I'm sure there's love points along the way, right? Maybe it's additional interactions with industry. Maybe it's that additional oversight, right? The low risk that the long time frame provides. I think having a good grasp on those love points and those pain points for each of the different customer groups is absolutely critical. And not losing sight of the fact that while you have one process, you have very different types of customers going through it, right? So continuing on the candidate example, a candidate who's coming out of an academic experience or entry-level workforce experience is going to have very different preferences and expectations in interacting with you all through that recruitment process than a seasoned executive. There's even generational preferences that need to be considered when building out your recruitment and your talent pipeline. And those are all things that, as we walk through some of these examples, you'll see how those can be documented and articulated. And Sarah, if you don't mind going back one slide, because I want to point out a few other things, if you don't mind, to the kind of the blank template. That's it, perfect. So we've got those personas. So once an organization gets a good grasp using the data that's available to them to the different types of customers, they start to map out the process that those customers go through. This is another one of the tidbits that we hope you all will leave with today. So to do customer journey mapping well and to do it effectively, you really do have to engage all parts of the organization. Executive leadership typically certainly has access to process documentation, certainly has access to SOPs and to policies, but actually understanding what the customer is going through, the experiences people in the call center are having, the experiences people at the front desk are having, or just even the working level when you all exchange emails and interactions with your colleagues and other government partner agencies. If you don't bring the entire workforce into the process, it really is challenging to have a comprehensive view of that customer experience and where you're losing them. So by bringing people in, using accurate data that you all have available, you can really shape these personas and fill in the critical information that's on the bottom left. And we'll send you all this template. I know it can be challenging to see around those pain points and those love points. Right? So where are people experiencing pain and where are they really excited to be a part of this process? And then you really map it out in a traditional kind of process-oriented way. These really they take a variety of forms. This is a good example. This is actually for an auditor and the experience that they have interacting with other business functions in a public sector environment. As you can see, as they go through this process, they have a number of different love points and they have a number of different pain points. Some of the pain points are early on. That tends to have a ripple effect into additional pain points as they go throughout. While we capture all of the activities in the sequence of a traditional process, we're getting a lot more information. We've engaged, in this example, actual auditors in the process. So you'll see when you all receive the slides in the bottom row, you actually see some quotes to help people fully understand kind of the experience that people are going in. So as you all shape customer journey maps and you look to improve the customer experience, you have a full insight of those trade-offs. In reality, customer journey maps typically do create a series of trade-offs between where you want to raise the standards of customer service and where you just have pure process effectiveness. And I know you all make those decisions every day. These process maps will help you have a full comprehensive view of what those kind of benefits and those risk-reward ratios are. Okay. Perfect. So we mentioned the personas. One other template that we did want to show you all as we start to shift is really the heat maps. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sarah. So the love points and the pain points. I know these are very generic terms that I've been using kind of at a high level. These come from interactions with your customers. These come from, and many of you all can probably name these just from simple conversations. When we think about the procurement example, I think it very comes natural to mind what those love points and those pain points are. But using those terms with your workforce can really go a long way, especially shifting the mindset of those employees who would naturally not think of the people that they're serving from that customer mindset. Heat maps are a powerful template that we'll share with you all as well, just to get a kind of a strong visual in terms of the ratio of where your customers stand today. So we shared a few examples, and I know we have limited time, but we wanted people to have a good understanding of, are these actually a tool that makes sense for your organizations? In most cases, we feel that they are. When we reflect on implementations or we've had hiccups or strategies that haven't quite met the mark, Most of the time, it's a lack of understanding of the ultimate customer's desire and what their requirements were that typically is the root cause of those challenges. So, I mean, while we feel that customer journey mapping is certainly a good investment of the agency's time, there are a few questions that we think would really help you all prime this, and especially if you are interested, get buy-in from your fellow colleagues. So when we think about internal, right, the agency-to-agency customers that all of you all in the room have, and the shared services that you all are providing. I know we've all gone through a major change in the last 2 years, and we'll continue to go through changes in the future, but major changes are prime time to go through this journey and to map the process. The reason being, and I think the challenge with customer journey maps, is they're going to constantly change. While those processes, as I mentioned, will remain static, the pain points and the love points are going to change. And having a disciplined and routine process for revisiting those is really critical to successfully meeting the needs of your customers. So as I think about the virtual workforce, continuing this theme that I know is on the top of everyone's minds, really everything has changed. We think about what's important to them, what they want out of the experience as an employee. And when you all think about employee retention, employee satisfaction, I think it's important to revisit these things on a regular basis. While I know many of you all have virtual workforces today, many of you all will shift to hybrid. That would be another change that I think would really trigger wanting to relook at this material. So as you all are making decisions, you can really be primed for success. Opportunities for additional customer satisfaction, redundancy and manual work happening is another great example. I know as consultants, we traditionally turn to process mapping right away, but after doing many process maps over the years, you can almost always skip a few steps by just really asking yourselves these complex questions about the actual customer and the end state that the customer wants to be in. So we always share this as an example when a customer map is primed. Certainly morale and engagement are good examples, and then the 80-20 rule. Really, I think focusing on some of your core customer challenges can really go a long way in improving broader processes. And certainly, I think there's a number of examples. I know many of you all also work with the public and have public-facing services as well. This is where we see customer journey maps really flourishing, from the DMVs to the alcoholic beverage control centers, and everything really in between. There are a lot of benefits when you think about the competitive environment of the consumer experience that need to be considered. And customer journey maps really can help you all take a number of shortcuts to meeting those needs. So let me just pause here. This has been a lot of material. Any questions? Does anyone have an example they want to share, or any questions on where we've deployed something like this? Or how you all could use that in your day-to-day? Yes, Beth.
So we started out using the tool to look at our processes, and I was surprised at how many of our staff did not. We started out using lean tools to document our processes, and I was surprised at how many of my staff didn't understand who their customers were.
Yeah.
And going through that process, we were able to identify stakeholders, customers, other people who should all either have a voice in that process and or who we should be serving. And I think that was a great first step into the next step, which is the journey. We couldn't do the journey map until we had sort of the process down. We were able to improve the process, improve the timing, and get it to a place that we liked it before we started the next step. So I think we're probably in the middle with our processes, but I think we're at least on the right path, and we're really focused on our customer experience. Started doing some surveys, things like that, and getting some feedback that's not easy to maybe read, but it's sort of a gift to tell us where we need to do better.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Beth. Out of curiosity, how many people in the room have dedicated personnel or dedicated staff in their organizations focused on customer service? Traditionally, it's like a call center of sort of, it makes sense. Yeah, we don't see that too frequently. I think, Beth, the process you described, they're most successful when they're done routinely and have really formalized into a program, because the data is hard to collect, and I know you all have very busy schedules. It's often just hard to prioritize, right? As you think about the day-to-day needs of the organization, it's always hard to find time to invest in that forward-looking mechanism, but it always does pay off, certainly. Okay. So we did just want to highlight with you all the 3 steps, and we hope that you all can take maybe just a few of these and think about how someone in your organization could deploy them. But agreeing upon standard definitions is really critical, and I think this is where we talk about the mindset of the workforce and the cultural changes that might need to take place. who are those customers, right? And we see them. I was in a meeting yesterday where the head of the agency and the rest of the leadership team wasn't fully aligned on who their customers were, right? And I think that's something that happens fairly frequently, especially when we think about government-to-government services. So getting everyone aligned and communicating that effectively is by far the first and most critical step. And that will not only have impactful elements as you will actually formalize a journey map or some sort of documentation that attempts to cover this, but we'll just have broader cultural benefits as well. And identifying, of course, the processes you want to focus on, and considering the many templates, examples, et cetera, that you can lean on. And we'll send you a few following this presentation. But customer journey maps have been around for quite some time. We're seeing them really accelerate in popularity in the public sector, and I would encourage you all to really lean in on all the data material that's available to you all in this space. Identify commonly occurring user dimensions, so new customer, existing customer, what are those personas that you all want to focus on and understand? Identifying the journey stages and steps. So this is where having everyone at the table is absolutely critical. So I mentioned the example where the executive leadership team was misaligned on the customer. In those scenarios, there's certainly going to be complications and confusion throughout the ranks, right? So bringing everyone together to fully understand those customers is always an insightful journey. And then actually mapping it out, right? Asking through the experience, what's the customer going through? What are they feeling? What is their experience through each process step? And stepping away from the traditional kind of work streams or the swim lanes that we may put on a process map and really only thinking of it through each customer experience. And if you do these well, you'll have multiple customer journey maps for one process. If you have 4 to 5 persona groups, you'll have 4 to 5 of these. And they really do tell a powerful story. Focusing on the pain, even the hate points that I know we all experience, especially when maybe serving the public or serving other service to service where we've got constraints in a process. Certainly something to consider, and then mapping those out and really creating and formalizing a future state. So let me pause. Any questions or thoughts? Out of curiosity, I'd be really interested in anyone's initial reaction about how their workforce might respond to a process like this. And going through, I know you all do process maps, I'm sure on a regular basis, but shifting that mindset to instead of structuring a process documentation on the silos of the organization and the structure that you all have existing today, shifting it to more of the customer experience. Just really curious how you all would feel the workforce would respond. Yes.
I would just offer an observation. I think the enterprise workforce would. Thanks. I think the enterprise-wide workforce would respond well, especially in a department like mine, which I think we have many examples of here, the general services / internal services / in my case it's called enterprise services, but we all provide similar support services for other state agencies. And my colleague and I were talking about how much this is really very much needed in my agency, where not all of the business lines relate very well to each other. So there's a lot of silo customer service being done, often to the same people in the same agencies, but they have to go to different places in my agency. So I love the idea of this, how the workforce would respond to it. I think like any change, that would have to be managed. But that doesn't stop us, right?
Yeah, I think that's very fair. And we see that every day. And I know that there's no magic formulas. Every organization is very different. But what we focus on in those areas where we do see resistance to this mindset is, as an executive team, identify what those pain points are that everyone in the workforce can relate to. So using the procurement example, time to finish a procurement from beginning to end, and use that to kind of gain some buy-in on trying these processes. That's where we've had the most success. And that's kind of the kind of early end of change management, which I know you all are certainly familiar with. When you think about the kind of reinforcement component of change management, where we have success is performance metrics. That's another area I know that's a challenge in public sector to kind of fine-tune performance metrics on a regular basis. But most organizations we work with will build out a customer journey map, will set the expectations from the executive leadership team. But at the end of the day, the staff are being measured from a performance point of view on metrics that are not aligned with these journey maps, or what may actually help you meet some of these customer goals. So those are two areas that come to mind. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
So, Colin, in the interest of time, we do have two great case study examples we'd love to share with you all, but I know we're standing between you all and lunch, so we will make sure that Pam has those. But we would like to close out with a group exercise, if that's okay.
Yeah, it'd be great.
So let's continue. As adult learners, this is always my spiel, but I think this is so important. As adult learners, we have to have a few moments to think about the information we've been given and how it reflects with our own experience professionally. So let's take the last 5 minutes or so and kind of talk amongst our tables about those internal challenges that we just mentioned, but also data collection. We didn't have a lot of time to talk about it, but a lot of these customer journey maps really need a data set to get started. So I'd love for you all to share with each other your own experiences with that. If you see challenges there, getting the data you might need to really properly map a customer's journey. And then also how you might begin the conversation with your own internal teams. So let's do a quick 5 minute, we'll get the elevator music keyed back up, and we'll do 5 minute debrief with each other.